Hey broskies, have you ever wondered what Firestar would look like with real genetics applied? Me too. Well, let's jump right into it. To start off, unfortunately, no genetic combination from Jake and Nutmeg would make Firestar orange, and I know that just rips the heart out of everyone, but it's true. Because the base colors for cats are on the X chromosome. So let me explain. Cats have two base colors, black and orange. The color is determined by the X chromosome. Stay with me, broskies. The X chromosome, for those who don't know, are one of the only two chromosomes that determine sex, and the other chromosome is Y. So XX makes a female, and XY makes a male. I know this isn't science class, but I promise this will matter. The two base colors are determined by the X chromosome. This means that in order to have an orange cat, the cat must also have an orange on the X chromosome. This is also typically notated with a subscript O and a lack of notation for black, so it'd just be X. So now you may be thinking, okay, but Jake is orange canonically, so clearly he has an orange X chromosome to pass on, right? Well, that is true, but he can't pass it on to Firestar or any male for that matter. You see, males don't pass on colors to males. Now, why is this? Because a male has an XY and a female has an XX. So a male offspring must get an X from his mother and a Y from his father to make him male. So now that we know that Firestar gets the X from his mother, how do we know the X would be black and not orange? And does it matter which X he inherits from Nutmeg? Here's how female chromosomes work. If both chromosomes carry orange, then the base coat will be orange. If both don't carry orange, then the base coat will be black. However, if a female cat has both orange and black chromosomes, then the cat will be both orange and black, kind of like a calico or a tortoiseshell. So we know Nutmeg must have a base color of black because there is no orange in her coat. So Firestar would get the Y from Jake and the X from Nutmeg, which would not be orange, so his coat would be black. At this moment, we have Firestar with a black coat color. This is not his complete look, but we need to dive a bit more into some information before we can continue on with what he would look like. This is where it gets a little bit complicated, so we're going to go on a little tangent. But let's talk about Nutmeg for a second. She clearly doesn't have a black coat, even though there are two base colors, black and orange. In the book, she's described as a brown and white she-cat. And in real life, there's also more than just orange and black cats. So, what's the deal? Let's talk about locus B. Locus B is a part of the genetic code in chromosomes that tells the coat what shade of black it should be. Each chromosome, in this case X and Y, will give one allele of information from each parent, and the combination of the two alleles will dictate the coat color. And this occurs in more than just locus B, as this is typically how genetics works with alleles. However, in locus B, there are three shades of black. These will be represented by big B, which is black, little b, which is chocolate or brown, and B prime, which is cinnamon or light brown. And in this case, black is the most dominant and light brown is the least dominant, or in other words, light brown is the most recessive. Recessive just means that when two alleles are paired together, for example, big B, B prime, the coat color would reflect the most dominant allele, and since B prime is recessive to big B, the coat color would be black instead of cinnamon. Now let's go back to Nutmeg. We can see that the color that matches Nutmeg best is brown, as cinnamon has kind of a red tint to it, which means her most dominant allele would be little b. However, she still needs one more allele to complete the pair, and we can deduce that it's not big B since again her coat is not black, so this leaves little b and B prime. In either case, her coat color would not change. However, it could potentially impact her offspring depending on the allele combination they receive. Since we're trying to get Firestar as close to canonical as possible, we would want to pick the allele that is closest to orange, which, if we go back, in this case would be cinnamon, or B prime. So now we know Nutmeg has little b, B prime for her locus B alleles. So far we've learned that Firestar gets a Y from Jake and an X from Nutmeg, and Nutmeg has little b, B prime alleles. So now we need to find out what Jake's locus B alleles are. But sugar, I thought that males don't pass on base colors. They don't. Males can't pass down base colors on their Y chromosome, as base color is on the X chromosome, just like we mentioned earlier. However, males still have locus B in their Y chromosome, as it influences shades and not the base color. So Jake still has a locus B, but he's not black, brown, or cinnamon. So how do we know what his allele combination is? Well, we don't. He could be any allele combination, but since he has an orange X, only the orange will show in his coat. So in this case, we want to choose, again, what would make Firestar the closest to canonical colors as possible. And earlier we saw that the closest color to orange was light brown or cinnamon. And since we know that light brown or B' is the most recessive, that means that Firestar would need to have both alleles being B', B' for him to be light brown. So circling back to Jake, he needs to at least have one B' in his allele pair. The other allele doesn't matter because it's not going to show in his coat and it's not going to be passed on. So for the sake of this video, we're just going to make him big B, B'. And now we can go back to our original diagram and make Jake have the alleles big B, B'. And this would give Firestar the alleles B', B', which would make him light brown or cinnamon. So Firestar is getting a B' from both Jake and Nutmeg. But what happens to the big B from Jake and the little b from Nutmeg? Do they just disappear? What happens to those alleles? So we can actually look at how alleles are combined and see the percentages from each combination. So let's break it down. Jake has big B, B', and Nutmeg has little b, B'. So using this Punnett square, we can see every possible combination they can create. Not only does it tell us every combination, but it also tells us the genotype and phenotype percentages. And without getting too complicated, genotype just basically means what the alleles actually are. So big B, B', little b, B'. And phenotype is what the alleles are showing us. So in this case, what the coat color is. Black, brown, light brown. Going back to the Punnett square, we can see the genotypic breakdown is a 25% chance of being big B, little b, B', big B, B', and B', B'. And if we move this to a different screen, the phenotype would look something like this. A 50% chance of the coat being black, and a 25% chance of the coat being either brown or light brown. Just a reminder that the 50% chance comes from the fact that the big B is dominant, and there are two sets of alleles that have big B, so those coat colors would show up as black, even though there are other alleles paired with the big B. And although in this case Firestar has a 50% chance of his coat being black, let's remember that we have no idea what Jake's genotypes actually are, and we just placed that big B there. We are also trying to get Firestar as close to canonical as possible, so I am choosing the alleles, which would get us there in this case. So now we have Firestar as light brown or cinnamon, but we are missing one thing. I know, we're almost done, I promise we're almost done. If you'll notice, Nutmeg also has some white in her coat, and she is described as brown and white. So this is where we learn another locus. Locus S is where the white alleles are located. Don't ask me why it's not locus W, I have no idea. But to continue, this locus was a bit complicated, so instead of trying to explain exactly how all of this works, because there was a lot of research on it, I'm just going to simplify it. Instead of locus S being defined by each individual allele, for example, big B is a black coat, Y is defined by the pair of alleles. So big S is no white, big S is some white, and little s is mostly white. So with Nutmeg having some white, we can label her as big S, and Jake not having any white would make him big S. If we make another Punnett square, where this time Jake is big S, and Nutmeg is big S, we can fill out the square and see the genotype would be 50% big S, and 50% little s, meaning that any offspring from them have a 50% chance of either having no white or having some white. So now we're faced with a decision. We can either make Firestar big S, having no white, or we can give him big S, or having some white. We're trying to get him as close to canonical as possible, so the answer to that would be big S, or having no white, because he is not described as having any white at all. However, in the case of this video and continuing on genetics and trying to make his offspring as canonical as possible as well, we would want him to have big S, or some white, so that way his offspring has a chance to get that white as well. So I'm just going to make the executive decision to give Firestar some white or the genotype big S, maybe against my better judgment. So this is our genetically accurate Firestar that's as close to canon as possible without messing up the genetics his offspring would have. Just a quick recap. Jake's chromosomes are X subscript O, Y. We chose for his B locus to be big B, B prime, though he could theoretically have any combination, and his S locus would be big S for no white. Nutmeg's chromosomes are XX. Her B locus is little b, B prime. Also, theoretically, she could be little b, but for Firestar's genetics, we gave her B prime. And her S locus is big S. So Firestar gets a Y from his father and an X from his mother, making his base coat black. Then using a Punnett square, we chose the most canonical colors that would be light brown, or B prime from his parents. And also using a Punnett square, we chose big S, so his line would still have white in it, even though the canonical choice for Firestar would have been to choose big S, or no white. So this is a very generalized version of what Firestar would look like. I didn't go into any coat patterns or eye color genetics because it would have made the video really, really long. But if that's something that you guys want to see, then I can certainly do some more research and make a video about that as well. My plan right now is kind of to just go down Firestar's line until we hit the trio and then see where that takes me. But otherwise, if you guys want to see a particular line, for instance, Tiger Star or Misty Star, I could certainly get going on that as well. So thank you for watching. Leave a like if you feel inclined. If you didn't like it, totally fair. And I hope to see y'all in the next one. See ya.